With the announcement of the Final Fantasy Pixel Remasters for consoles, including the PS4 and the Nintendo Switch, I figured it was finally time to make a video on a question that I've been asked countless times. Are the Pixel Remasters of the first 6 Final Fantasy games worth the purchase? Well, the too long didn't watch answer is yes and no. But please, for the love of God, the video is short and I need watch time, so while you're at it, go ahead and watch. And feel free to like, subscribe, and comment with your favorite Final Fantasy humorous moment. While I won't be covering the new console versions exclusively that have been released, but a quick overview of the Pixel Remasters as a whole. Luckily, I have had the pleasure of playing through all 6 of the Pixel Remasters as part of our Final Fantasy Friday series that I live stream both on my Twitch channel and here on YouTube. Not only do I play through them, I have also reviewed each of them, so if you want a little bit more in-depth on any of the titles individually, they are available here on the channel. Now link to the playlist in the description below. First things first, these titles boast an impressive graphical overhaul. I personally loved how all 6 of the titles looked. However, the first 3 titles benefit the most from this due to being on an older titles on an earlier platform. With the SNES era of titles, the increase isn't quite as jaw-dropping, but they still look amazing all the same. The special effects and details in the environments are probably the aspect that look most improved. Now, since we were talking about the visual aspects, the one thing that many have pointed out to do with is the font selection. Personally, I did not find any issues with the font, as I was too enamored with the overall presentation to think too negatively on it. However, those that didn't care for it are in luck, as the new versions have an additional font that can be used as a little bit more modern, and it fits in more with the overall aesthetic. While I can't say I love either of the 2 options that are presented here, I feel like the backlash over the font is way too emphasized as a negative, but at the end of the day, if the bandwagon of hate is bashing the font while leaving the rest of it mostly alone, I see that as a win. One thing that is kind of odd to me is the off-center bottom portion of the heads-up display. While I see that this is most likely so that the command prompt can appear on the left, it just seems a little off-putting, but ultimately yet just another very minor grievance. One of the coolest graphical enhancements across the Pixel Remasters is the opera scene in Final Fantasy VI. Square brings in a pseudo 2D, 3D style a la Octopath Traveler to this scene, and it looks absolutely breathtaking. However, I find it to be a bittersweet moment, as it makes me want all of the games to have the same level of TLC brought to them, but also solidifies that since this came out, that will probably never happen. My personal favorite part of the Pixel Remasters has to do with the music. Good lord, they knocked it out of the park with the music in these. While continuing to channel the sweet nostalgia and feeling of grandeur from the original titles, the instrumentation was vastly improved, bringing on a full orchestra, guitars, and what I liked to coin as the Final Fantasy Mariachi Band to revive these masterpieces like a phoenix summoning. Seriously though, the fact that the music was redone brought me so much absolute joy throughout my playthroughs. Now sure, there are a couple pieces that you may not like exactly what they did with it, but now with these new versions of the Pixel Remasters, you can swap between the original soundtracks and the remasters at any point that you see fit, which is a great feature to be brought to this version. So we've established that they look pretty and they sound good, but how do they play? Overall, they all play great. However, numerous changes and fixes were applied to each of the games. So in the first 3 titles, you no longer have to worry about your attacks becoming ineffective when an enemy dies and another character attempts to hit it. The game will automatically move the attack so that it hits an enemy that is alive. Typically, it goes from the top right downward and goes through each of the rows. All of the bugs from the original titles have been fixed, such as the spells actually work in Final Fantasy I, and a myriad of bugs from Final Fantasy VI have been addressed. In Final Fantasy II, the back row system works better, and leveling up your skills is no longer as much of a slog. The grind still exists, but it's nowhere near as bad as the original NES version. In Final Fantasy III, there are no longer capacity points, so you can change jobs as you see fit. Final Fantasy IV returns the game more to its original Japanese version in terms of difficulty and skills. So you'll notice that Cecil has darkness abilities if you are used to the US version on the NES. Final Fantasy V has several small tweaks and balances, but personally I didn't notice it all that much. Now Final Fantasy VI is one of the versions that got the biggest amount of changes. As I said previously, it got all of its bugs fixed, but several gameplay improvements were added as well. For instance, with Cyan, you can select his Bushido or sword art skill and then wait for the attack instead of stopping your entire party from being able to move while it charged up, making him a much more viable character to the playthrough. With Sabin, you can see the inputs for the blitzes that you are performing, and they're much more generous than the initial release, so even if you fail them, you can still try again. A big addition to the games is that they use autosaves, which they are also quite generous with, so you no longer have to worry so much if you accidentally run into a war mech, or maybe you're ill-prepared for a situation and suffer a party wipe. You also have a map in the upper right corner, which helps immensely for finding chests, or just figuring out where the hell you are in Final Fantasy II. One thing that I know has upset a lot of people is that the Pixel Remaster versions do not include any of the additional dungeons or content that was added over the years from different release entries. Now, I don't know for certain why this is, but I do believe it has to do something with licensing, as that tends to be the issue far too often. Other accessibility options were also added into the game, like ethers in the earlier titles, which makes traversing the longer dungeons and portions of the games much more palatable. The new console version will also have options for increased XP, gil, and ability points acquisition where applicable. Another option with that is you have the ability to turn off random enemy encounters completely, which could potentially help so many more people experience the stories without what they may feel as like a slog at times. Now, as of recording this video, there's no patch that adds these features into the original Pixel Remaster releases on Steam, so are the Pixel Remasters worth the price? Now, to answer this, we need to go through them individually. With Final Fantasy I, I think you really need to look at whether or not you want the extra content, and whether you like an MP-based magic system or a more classic spells per level cast system. If you like the MP-based magic system, the best option would be the PSP release, with the spells per level option being the Pixel Remaster version. With Final Fantasy II, I would definitely recommend the Pixel Remaster version, as it's just faster, more polished, and less grindy than pretty much any other version that's out there, so it's overall more enjoyable. Final Fantasy III, there aren't really that many options, so it would really come down to whether or not you enjoy the 3D version that was originally released on the DS and then later ported to Steam, or the Pixel Remaster version. Personally, I like the Pixel Remaster version. For Final Fantasy IV, it really depends on if you want the extra dungeon again or not. If so, the PSP version would be the best way to play it, as it not only has the extra dungeon, but also the after years, if you like being kicked in the repeatedly. If not, you need to ask yourself if the 3D style that was available on the DS or Steam, or do you like the Pixel Remaster more? Personally, I once again opt for the Pixel Remaster version. Final Fantasy V once again comes down to that extra content. The GBA version has more bosses and more jobs, but the Pixel Remaster version is a better overall package in both playability and virtually every other aspect. With Final Fantasy VI, lastly, the running theme of if you want extra content or not will be your deciding factor. GBA for the extra content, Pixel Remaster otherwise. Also, I feel that I need to mention the availability of the titles will probably play a big part in your choices. So if you don't have a PSP, Game Boy Advance, or you don't feel like messing with emulators or anything like that to play it on your PC, then obviously the Pixel Remaster versions are going to be the clear winners. Now overall, I would personally recommend all of the Pixel Remaster titles. Albeit, I feel like the NES titles got a much bigger glow up from the process, so I feel if you were only going to handpick a couple of them, I would look more at those based on what ones you wanted to play, as those were the ones that definitely improved the most from their initial releases. Before I started my review series, I laughed at the Pixel Remasters as I thought they were just going to be another cash grab opportunity. But after experiencing all of them, I can safely say that there was a lot of love and care put into these remasters, and it would be well worth both your money and your time. Even better, if you can get them on sale. I don't know about the PS4 or Switch versions, but quite often the Pixel Remasters, or really anything Square Enix, goes on sale fairly often on Steam. I hope this review has been helpful. Feel free to ask any questions in the comments and I'll be happy to answer them as quickly as possible. Once again, I would like to thank my Patreons, for without you, I would not be able to create the content as I do. So thank you so much. And for all of you other heroes of light, praise be to Yevon.